Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. He, of course, the son of the former president of the United States, hopefully the future president of the United States. It's Eric Trump. Eric, how are you? Good to see you.
Good to be back on, Joe.
You know, I shot you a text the day you were doing your speech, and you were so nice to me in saying you couldn't come on because you wanted to save your voice for the big speech. And you know what? It was worth it because what you had to say was so heartfelt, and it hit everybody in my family and everybody watching right where it should have. Great job at the RNC. How did you feel coming out of that?
Well, listen, it was an emotional week, as you could probably imagine. I mean, I watched my father get shot, my kids on my lap. 48 hours later, I was putting him over the top. I was the delegate that made him effectively the Republican nominee for president of the United States. And then, I go up directly before my father. I had the honor of speaking, pretty much directly before him, right? It was me, Dana White, and then
Right.
obviously my father to close out the entire convention. So, hundreds of millions of people watching. And obviously, it's an honor of a lifetime, but I love the man dearly. He's a remarkable human being. I've sat there behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. I mean, clearly, I'm not shy in terms of the camera, but
Right.
behind the scenes, Joe, I've seen the way that they've attacked him. I've seen the way that they've come after us. They've tried to bankrupt us. They've tried to take him down. They've tried to destroy our family. They've tried to imprison us. What they've done from day one to us is unthinkable. It can't be the United States of America. I mean, it literally feels like a third world country, and then they tried to kill him. And I watched him with blood coming down his face, and only to see him kind of walk back into the arena to people crying and loving America and loving what everything we stand for. And
Yes.
it's been an emotional journey. I have to be honest. It's the guy did it for all the right reasons, and they've tried to destroy him at every turn. And I've never been more proud, and I was never more proud to stand on that stage that night. It was a great kind of culmination of emotions, and I think the speech hit it out of the park.
It did because it resonated with people that this is not just some guy that we knew as the billionaire developer. It's not just the guy that we knew as the president. This is your father, and you on my show have many times described him as your best friend. So I talked to Don, your brother Don, the day after it happened, the morning after. I haven't talked to you since, not publicly. We've texted and stuff like that. But where were you when you found out your dad had been shot? You weren't in Pennsylvania, right?
No, listen, I go to some of the rallies, and obviously, I was going to be gone. I was going to be at the RNC convention all week.
Yeah.
So I'm like, stay home. I'm going to try and spend, 12 hours with my kids. I have a little 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And so I'm going to miss that rally. So I wasn't there that day. Shit, I would have jumped on that stage as well. It's
Right.
probably better off from there. But I was watching it with my children. I had them on my lap, and Laura was there. And sure enough, I did a lot of competitive shooting. I still do, and I know that sound all too well. I knew exactly what it was. I actually looked down at my laptop for a second. I was working on an email at the time, and I heard those shots, and I instantly looked up, knowing that it was not good. Obviously, saw him grab his ear, and then have 20 people jump on top of him, and then he emerges, and he's got blood running down his face. And Laura grabs me. She goes, "Oh my God!" Right, like and listen, if you get hit in the head, assume the worst, right? It's it's
Yeah.
it's not a great possibility that you're gonna have a great outcome when you're bleeding from the side of the face. And I did everything that I could to not have my kids kind of see it and really
Right.
understand what was going on. And fortunately, little kids have massive ADD, right? So that's probably a good thing. But my daughter went to camp the next day, and I heard your grandfather was shot yesterday, and she was hysterical. You probably seen 1,000 videos of them together, and
Oh yeah.
I mean, and so it was interesting. And he calls me from the hospital 45 minutes later, an hour later, and he goes, "Eric, nothing changes about the RNC. We go to the minute when we were going to go originally. Nothing changes about the convention." And he's just remarkable. I mean, he's still in the hospital. Hasn't even had a CAT scan. He just got shot in the head, and he's saying, we're not going to get deterred. We're not going to change our plans 1 second. We're going there as planned. And it was a proud moment. I mean, the guy is an absolute warrior. He's an absolute fighter. And I say it all the time, Joe, but like that's kind of mentality you need as president of the United States. We don't have a fighter fighting for us anymore. I mean, look at Kamala; she's a joke. And I'm not. She's not fighting. She's put in charge of the southern border. That's an absolute mess. Our economy is an absolute mess. The market's crashing again today. The market was crashed 2 days ago. Down 1,000 points. Everything's unaffordable. People are struggling. Every person I know in this country that owns a small business, we need your father back. I mean, we can't make payroll. We can't support our staff. We can't, keep people employed. We can't afford anything. Business is down 30-40% from, when he was in office. Nothing's working. Everything's more expensive. We're getting creamed. Everything's getting crammed down. We can't afford to live our lives. We can, and small business owners all over the country. I mean, people are struggling in this country, and then you see a vice president get picked yesterday who literally, his biggest accomplishment was putting tampons in boys' bathrooms in
Yeah.
schools in Minnesota. I mean, it's we can't be serious. I mean, this isn't America. This isn't serious. It's tampons in boys' bathrooms in high
Right.
schools in public.
And letting Minneapolis burn to the ground and running people out of the state because they couldn't run their businesses. It's Eric Trump. Eric, this is why I love talking to you, because you go 18 different places that all make perfect sense when you bring it back together. He, of course, vice president of the Trump Organization, also the son of former President Donald Trump. What is it about your father? You just talked about a guy who told you nothing changes at the RNC. He doubled down on wanting to be the president again when he can go play golf every day and enjoy, his beautiful palace, Mar-a-Lago. What is it about this guy? They tried to bankrupt him, tried to jail him. They tried to smear him. They tried to say he went to Russia and did disgusting things. He tried to say he was a Russian pawn. They tried to kill him. And yet he's still, let's go do the RNC and make it better than ever. What is it about this guy? And is this, your whole life, have you known this, that your dad was a little bit different in a way that he wasn't going to lie down and let somebody beat him?
He's a warrior. I mean, he's a warrior, Joe, right? Dana White said it best. I thought it was maybe the best, clip of the entire convention. But he said that, listen, I'm in the tough guy business, and I've never seen a warrior like this. I've never seen a tough guy like this, and I'm in the tough guy business. And that's exactly right. I mean, if you could clone that DNA, it's something special about it
Yes.
because, you could take 1,000 out of 1,000 billionaires, exclude Donald Trump from that list, but 1,000 out of 1,000 billionaires, and every single one of them would be in a corner sucking their thumbs at this point. I mean, they
Yes.
tried to put him in jail. They've indicted him over nonsense. They impeached him. They made up dirty dossiers. They came up with slanderous Russia collusion, right? And all of it, obviously, it comes right back to the Clintons. And, I mean, they've weaponized every system against him to try and destroy his life and to try and destroy all of us. And he goes out and he continues to fight. And, it's backbone like I've never seen before. It's toughness. It's grit. It's principle. It's not giving a damn, all right? I mean, he wants to get to the end result. He loves this country, and he sees it getting flushed down the drain. I mean, frankly, he said it 1,000 times. If we had competent leaders in this country, believe me, I'd be the last person who ran for president of the United States. My life would be a lot better if I wasn't in office. The problem is it's total incompetence. I mean, what do we have right now? We have nothing. We've got wars breaking out all over the Middle East. Every day, more rockets are flying. Israel is totally under siege. Our economy sucks. Gas prices are way too high. Businesses can't succeed in this country. Manufacturing's leaving this country. John Deere just announced that it's closing down a lot of his plants in the Midwest. It's moving all its manufacturing to Mexico. I mean, where have we heard this before? Does that give you kind of deja vu to 2016?
Well, yeah. I mean, your dad came in and he actually he lured businesses back by lowering the corporate tax, by lowering regulations, lowering taxation for everybody who pays taxes. Yet the left keeps on lying about him. It's Eric Trump. For those of you listening, of course, it's the son of former President Donald Trump. Let's say you brought up Walz and you brought up Harris. Eric, I don't think that the media would let your dad go a half a day without having a microphone and a camera in his face. They have not asked Kamala Harris anything in 17 days, 18 days, since we were told she's the nominee, which she's not. Joe Biden is the de facto nominee. He won every delegate. She's never even won a primary. She never made it to Iowa in 2020. She's never won a delegate, but we're told she's the nominee. They won't ask her anything. She won't sit down and take any questions. And then you got this guy, Walz. What are we talking about with this guy who let his city completely burn to the ground, take down the precincts? Your dad offered National Guard the day it started, and he said no, and he waited a full day before accepting the National Guard, which could have stopped what was going on in Minneapolis. What are we looking at with that ticket? Do they really think that's going to be a winning combination?
Well, Joe, let's not forget. I mean, just in terms of in terms of the governor. I mean, not only did he do that, he defunded police, he disarmed police, and then when crime went through the roof in Minneapolis, he's the guy that went back to police and started begging them to come back and take their old jobs. Of which case they gave the middle finger and said, "We're not coming back." You literally. You weaponized the entire system against us. You came after us. You defunded us. You disarmed us. And now, when your city goes to hell, and effectively, I mean, just unthinkable breaks out all over the place, and the streets are rampant with nonsense and crime and homelessness and drugs. You beg us to come back to fix the problem when you originally defunded us? No, F you. And that's effectively what happened. But
right.
I don't know how they think it's a winning combination. I mean, this is a guy who literally said, if Donald Trump builds a wall that's 25 feet tall, I'm going to build a ladder factory in Mexico, make ladders that are 30 feet tall so people can continue to come across the border. I mean,
Yes.
is this the guy that really has the United States best interest at heart? I mean, we talked about, tampon Tim, but that's a priority. How about transgender, allowing conversions of children without their parents' consent?
Literally
I
keeping
mean,
it from their parents. Yeah.
worse than Gavin Newsom was. I mean, listen, I'm not far. I'm a pretty practical human being. I
Yes.
can't see any mom or father on either end of the political spectrum that thinks that's okay, that somebody can do, transition therapy on a child without their parental consent on young children. I mean, give me a break. Is this really the priority? And go on and on, right? So their school system is failing. It's gone to hell under his leadership. Again, with these radical policies that are just insane. People are leaving the state. It's the highest tax, one of the highest tax states in the country. The city, in terms of crime rate, has gone to hell. And then you look at Kamala. I mean, she was a DA and AG in San Francisco. San Francisco 20 years ago was one of the greatest cities in our country, and look where it is right now. I mean,
Right.
before the president of China comes over, they have to literally kick all the homeless people off. There's syringes everywhere, hypodermic needles everywhere. It's the most expensive place to live. You can't walk across the city without getting robbed. It's a cesspool. Every business has moved out of there. I mean, every business has moved. Look what Elon Musk did. He just moved, all his businesses out of there. It's insane. They focus on all the wrong things,
Yes.
so effectively you have California and you have Minnesota on the ticket. And if you stack those states up, they are dead last in terms of performance of states. And you can't have our country follow that. I mean, you're going
No.
to lose the United States of America. Nothing is working in those two states, and nothing is working with these two politicians.
Vice President of the Trump Organization, it's Eric Trump. Eric, I appreciate the time and the access. You mentioned the stock market. I'm not a guy who dabbles in the stock market. I've got a 401k. A lot of people watching and listening have pensions. Those are obviously affected by the ups and downs of the stock market. But something interesting happened, and I had an expert on the other day, and I wonder what you think about this. The stock market was doing great. It was going up because Trump was absolutely smoking Biden in every poll. Then we do the debate and completely shows that Biden's going to lose in a landslide. The stock market's doing even better. Then Trump gets shot. Stock market's doing even better because he survived it. And then suddenly they drop Biden, they kick him to the curb, put in Kamala Harris, and the stock market goes down. Is the stock market indicative of what we're seeing politically or not? Or is that just a happenstance?
Yeah, no, I think I think it's indicative of a lot of things. I can geek out about this for the next 2 hours because this is my life today. But yeah, I think the better my father does, I think the better stock market will do. And I think
Yes.
I think when they pull bait and switches, and you have the entire media who detested Kamala 2 weeks ago, but now she's, she walks on water. I mean,
Yes.
she's the kind of the Mother Teresa today to the media. I mean, it's hysterical. They couldn't stand her. None of them thought she was sharp. None of them thought she was doing the job. They all thought she was ineffective. Yet she becomes the anointed one, and they all kind of pile in behind her. But listen, we've got real systematic problems in this country. Interest rates are far too high. Good luck if you're a 25-year-old kid going out there and trying to, buy your first house. Not only is inflation double the prices of houses, right? Because it's 2x4s and steel and concrete and all sorts of other building materials which have shot through the roof. But now all of a sudden you're paying 7% on those houses. People can't afford it. So, good luck with the upward mobility under this environment. My father wants the low interest rates. Look at the cost of everything. We talked about it before, but especially when it comes to fuel, when it comes to groceries, when it comes to household items, right? You can't afford any of those anymore. But then look at the jobs, and jobs are really, really deceptive, and the American people have been lied to. Look at the jobs report. Don't actually just look at the jobs number. Look at how many of those jobs, and it's about 60%, have been in government, right? Either federal
Yes.
or state and local jobs. If you have a federal job or you have a state and local job, those aren't really kind of jobs as defined by jobs, right? Because somebody's ultimately paying for those people to otherwise work. Your tax
Right.
money is otherwise funding. And you have about 2 million new federal and state and local, employees. 2 million. This is out of a country of 340 million, but a small subsect of that is working, maybe 150 million, right? You add another 2 million government employees, and yet, so it shows a job number, and maybe the job number is okay. They're not strong, but say they were okay, they were on the margins. And then you look at that and you realize that 60% of them were actual federal jobs, right? That's a real problem. That
Yes.
causes real cracks. So between interest rates being out of control, between the mortgage crisis that you're going to have in this country, certainly on the commercial side, which you're already seeing play out, between inflation, which is a country killer, which everybody's seeing in their own personal lives, literally eggs being 40%, 50% higher than when my father was in,
Right.
fuel being more expensive, heating oil, you name it, utilities, right? Rent. I mean, look how much rent has gone up. I think we have an incredibly fragile economy. I mean,
We do.
incredibly fragile, and I'm seriously worried about what's to come. And you look at so many of the companies on in the small cap, the mid cap. I mean, these are companies that are reliant on debt, right? They're not Apple. They're not IBM. They're not Microsoft, right? I mean, these
Right.
are these are companies that are relying on debt, and all of a sudden they're getting squeezed. It means that their employees are going to get squeezed. This means that they're going to cut payroll. I mean, you could have real problems in this country, and then you have an administration. Sorry to be long-winded about this, that wants to add more regulations, wants to I mean, hurt you in every way, shape, or form, including massive tax hikes. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? It's why you're seeing manufacturing leaving this country again. And then
Well,
they put on,
it's like what your father said, Eric. It's sorry to interrupt you. You've got so much knowledge that you're throwing at me, and my brain's going crazy. A lot of those jobs, first of all, are part-time jobs that are Biden jobs that are non-governmental jobs. They're part-time. Those are not jobs that are making people have ends meet. People can't borrow money, even if they could afford the interest rate. They can't get the money. The banks and the financial institutions don't trust anybody to lend any money. And you're right. They're literally running on, I'm going to raise your taxes. I'm going to make sure that the Trump tax breaks expire in 2025. Who runs, your dad said this on the campaign trail, who runs by saying, I'm going to raise your taxes? And people can't wait to vote for them. It's very weird.
all while having such a strong dollar. There's real negatives to that, right?
Yes.
Strong dollar, guess what? It makes it very cheap to go buy manufacturing plants in Mexico because you have a strong dollar. It
Yes.
also makes it impossible for tourism because everything over here is too expensive. It also makes it impossible for American manufacturing because no one around the world, even though it's not a level playing field, and that's something that drove my father crazy, but anybody who would buy an American product can't do it anymore because it's now too expensive because you have a strong dollar. It is absolutely crushing industry in this country. The tax breaks are a major thing. My father said, I want the lowest taxes of any country in the world. I want taxes to be low. I want to repatriate billions and trillions of dollars from overseas. I want to bring that money back. You know how much, and we have property over there. I know this world very well, but you know how much money in pharmaceuticals and everything is sitting in countries like Ireland? I mean,
Is it in
billions
the
of
is it in the
dollars that just
trillions?
want to be repatriated back, but it's too expensive from a tax standpoint to bring back in. People are ripping us off like crazy. We're funding endless wars all around the world. We paid $200 billion so, Ukraine and Russia can mutually just sit there and just destroy cities, destroy culture, destroy lives, destroy beautiful 22-year-old kids who never had a chance in the world, cannot, and killing each other mercilessly in trenches. I mean, extinguishing lives with a small pull of the finger, unbeknownst to anyone. I mean, 20 years of some beautiful kid's life expunged in a third of a second based on, the fact that, we're sending those countries billions of dollars all while our schools go to shit. And I mean, excuse the language, but, while we don't spend any money on infrastructure, while our airports fall apart, it's infuriating. And Donald Trump wants to go back to a system where we start putting America first again. I mean, whatever happened to America winning as a country where American priorities come first, American people come first, the upward mobility of Americans come first, the American dream is alive and well. Government isn't crippling, taxes aren't crippling, regulations aren't destroying companies. We have manufacturing. We do it better than anybody. We have innovation. We have 100 Elon Musks who put a man on Mars. We lead the way with absolutely everything we do. We can do that if government just gets out of the way. But you have Kamala Harris and again, our new running mate who are more focused on putting tampons in boys' bathrooms in high school than they are focused on the actual things that matter. And it's infuriating. And
Well, you're absolutely right. But here's what they're doing, Eric, and you know this. They're calling you weird. They're calling your dad weird. They're calling me weird, Hannity weird. Everybody's weird. Everybody's odd. But then you look at just their rally alone was so strange yesterday. I don't know how they pull this off. So the question has to come back to the media, the complicit media. They don't like your father. They don't like your family. They don't like people like me. They don't like my family. They want more regulation. They want more centralized government. They want more Marxism or socialism, to be honest. They want the government to take care of all of us from the cradle to the grave. So how do you combat that knowing that they've got the media, academia, big music, big sports, big Hollywood? They've got everything locked down. How do you rise above that and beat that?
It's called a beautiful movement called, America First and Make
Yes.
America Great Again. You're right. They have all of it. And I've seen more corruption over the last couple of years than I can ever imagine. I've seen unthinkable things in the media, and it's amazing. I mean, the media is effectively, the press arm of the DNC. It just
Yes.
is. It's a shame that it's like that because our country has real problems. If people could even moderately call balls of strikes, I think we'd live in a much more productive world. But I will say, Joe, it's one of the reasons guys like you do so well. There's no trust in the media anymore. I mean, for the last 4 years, everybody that's listening to us right now has been told by the mainstream media that, Joe Biden was a great author, a great, he may as well be the modern Shakespeare, and he's
Right. That's right.
a wonderful writer. You may as well be the modern day Hemingway, and it's all nonsense. Everybody knew that he wasn't there. Everybody saw it. Everybody could see it with their own eyes. They could see his lair. They could see that he had lost so many of his faculties. And God bless you and I will probably be there as well. But that doesn't mean he has to be commander in chief.
Right.
But people were lied to by the mainstream media every single day. And guess what? There were guys like you, and there were guys like Tucker, and there were guys like Dan Bongino, and there were great guys, Joe Rogan on podcasts who would just
Yes.
call things out for what they were. And what happened is the mainstream media started losing the credibility in a very major way of the citizens of this country. And I think it's very hard for them to recover. I mean, they lied to the American people every single day. When he never came out of his bunker in 2020 during the election, they lied for him. They carried that water. They carried the message, right? Every single day. And then he steps onto that debate stage with my father. And sure enough, America, all of America, sees exactly what they had known for the last 4 years, exactly
Right.
what you had been saying and everybody else had been saying. And guess what? They have to do. They have to effectively, do a political assassination in the middle of the night of his character and replace him with somebody else. That person goes in there. She was otherwise hated before she went in there, and guess what? Now she's like the second coming of, she may as well be as I said, the modern day, Mother Teresa.
Right.
It's unbelievable. You watch this narrative. 2 weeks ago, they thought she was incompetent. They would make fun of her based on the fact that she was supposed to be the person who took on, AI safeguards, never did a damn thing. She was supposed to be the border czar, never did a damn thing. We had 300,000 kids in the last year that have died to fentanyl poisoning, all on her watch. They haven't done a damn thing. They've just created a migrant crisis in this country, unlike anything that we've ever seen. And most of them are young males, unfortunately. And by the way, most of them aren't even coming from South America anymore. They're coming from all other parts of the world, many of those
Right.
parts of the world that don't have our best interests at. But yet, she's incredible, and what a powerful ticket, and what an unbelievable choice for vice president. And I mean,
It's
it's
bizarro world.
it's beyond bizarre. And then you have my father on the other hand saying, listen, I want to have the greatest military in the world, but I don't want to use it. I want no wars. I want peace in the Middle East, which all of which he had.
Yes.
I want the lowest energy prices, the lowest oil and gas prices. I want the lowest taxes. I want the lowest interest rates so people can afford to buy homes and live the American dream. I want to have the greatest economy in the world. I want to have the safest nation in the world. I want to have immigration, but I want to know who's coming across that border, and they better be coming across with the right intentions, and they better be able to provide and add something to our country. I want legal immigration, great immigration. I want to know who these people are. I want safety. I want our streets to be clean. I want our cities to be rid of graffiti. I mean, such common sense things. I don't want to
Everybody,
be ripped off around the world. I want to
you would think
invest in
everybody
ourselves.
would want everybody would want that. You would think that. There's a little bit of a delay. I'm sorry about that, but you're right about all of that. And your dad can close the border. He showed how to do it in one day. The problem that I get, and the question that I get a lot, Eric, from people who are very, very concerned about this, those that are here now, that were given a free pass either through parole that was perverted and illegally used, or through asylum, which is perverted and illegally used. How do you get rid of 10 to 15 million people that are here illegally, that broke our laws to come here and are gaming the system? How do you get rid of them? Can you?
Yeah, I think you can. In a lot of ways, I think you can. Is it going to be easy? No. But, listen, make no mistake about it. Everybody talks about, they just want those people to go out and vote. And make no mistake, that's the absolute intention of the
Yeah.
Democratic Party. Joe, don't forget, they flew 300,000 people in on airplanes in the middle of the night. They were landing at airports all across the country in the middle of the night, right? Your
Yes.
taxpayer dollars were spent flying 737s and 757s into random airports that were landing at 2 o'clock in the morning, bringing illegal immigrants into this country. Like, it's not exactly like they're secretive about this. It's not incompetence that's causing this. This is an absolute, I mean, this is clearly their plan.
Yes.
It's not just that they also want those people to vote, the 11, 12, 13 million people who have come into the country in the last 3 years. Now, just to put in perspective, I was just over in Scotland, right? We have some properties over there. We have a hotel over there. Scotland has a population of 5.5 million people. 2 Scotlands have moved into our country in the last three-year period. I want to
Holy
put that in
mackerel.
perspective.
Wow.
Then Kamala goes out and says, we need to give every single illegal immigrant free healthcare. I mean, we can't pay for our own. We can't pay for the homeless guy that's sleeping under the bridge, who's a veteran, who was fighting wars for the United States of America, who's sleeping under a bridge, but yet we're housing these illegal immigrants in the nicest hotels in New York City. And guess what? You are paying for it. We are all
Yeah.
paying for it. And I mean, it's unthinkable. But let me just get back to my quick point. It's not that they just want those illegal immigrants to vote, and they tried every means to allow them to get state IDs and other things to allow them to vote, but they also want those people to influence the census, right? Because if New York gets another 500,000 people or 600,000 or 700,000 people, guess what? They'll have an extra spot in Congress, right? You
Yes.
get more congressional representation based on the amount of people that you have, and the census determines that. What a lot of people don't put together is the census isn't determined by legal people who are citizens of the United States of America, right? It's all people, it's all
Yes.
bodies in this area, and that's how your representation is formed. And so, hey, it's great to have another 13 million people spread out between California and between Texas and New York and Arizona and a host of other states. Guess what? It just means that certain states get additional representation, and that's going to go largely in favor of the blue states,
Of course.
i.e. the New Yorks and the New Jerseys and again the Californias, where certain states are going to pick up seats just based on the games that are being played. So this is absolutely a cognizant effort. Remember, my father built a border wall. It was not only did he put up 570 miles, but the rest of it was laying there. They sold the rest of the wall. All they had to do was stand it up.
It was
They
pennies on
sold
the, it was pennies on the dollar. They sold it,
sold
and
it for scrap
they
metal.
paid the contracts. They paid all the contractors that didn't do
All the
anything.
contracts they were already paid for. I mean, the contractors laughed their way all the way to the bank.
Yes.
They were probably the same people who bought the steel, melted it down for 2 cents on the dollar, and ended up making a fortune off of it. All the while, 300,000 kids have been poisoned by fentanyl, which is, I mean, it is a war crime. They're poisoning our youth in this country, all while we have, again, people focused on, whether or not a guy my height, 6'5", should swim in women's sports. It's
crazy.
It's infuriating, and I'm not.
Well, it's worth mentioning this, and I'm sure you know this. Tim Walz, as the governor of Minnesota, also is giving government-issued IDs, driver's licenses, to illegal aliens. He's making sure they get all the privileges. And by the way, as you know, if you register to drive, you also can register to vote while you're there. And then if you vote illegally, they say that they'll weed it out later, which you and I know is probably not true. That's the whole game, Eric. You're right. They want more. They want more congressional districts. They want to turn states like Arizona blue instead of purple or red. Same thing with Colorado. They're trying to turn my state, Texas, into a blue state, which they're going to have a hard time doing. But this is a multi-leveled plan that we have to stay ahead of. And your dad was way ahead of this, and he stopped their plan for 4 years. So let's just go for predictions here. I know what you want. I know what I want. I know what my family wants. But do we have to worry about them hiding Kamala Harris like they did Joe Biden? 17 days, not one question, Eric. Not one in 17 days. And I see no intention of them getting her in front of a microphone or a camera.
Of course they will, because the first question should be, your borders are. 300,000 kids this year have died of fentanyl poisoning. 300,000 moms, 300,000 dads, countless brothers and sisters don't have a loved one in their life because of your incompetence. Of course. I mean, they're basic questions. These aren't hard questions. You're supposed to take on AI policy. What have you done? What's your administration done? So much for touting Biden economics as we watch the world crash around us.
Right.
So much for touting Biden economics is literally people can't afford eggs. They can't afford gas. Unemployment is going up, and we're gonna have a bad day. I'm telling you. Just
yes.
Mark this, snap this little clip. I'm telling you, we're gonna have bad days coming. And people are already feeling it. Every small business in this country is feeling it. Every employee is feeling it in this country. Every employer is feeling this. So of course they're going to hide her, because she's going to have to answer questions like that. And they did exactly that for Biden. They hid him. And guess what? All of America didn't see his true incompetency. They didn't see his shortcomings. They didn't see his cognitive decline because he was hiding in a bunker.
Yes.
All the while they attacked myself and my father and everybody else in the orbit. They made up smear after smear after smear. I mean, Joe, they've weaponized every institution in this country, and yes. I'm not saying that. I mean, they've weaponized the FBI, they've weaponized the DOJ, they've weaponized the medical system. I mean, Look at those poor doctors when they came out and said, "Hey, hydroxychloroquine might actually work to take care of COVID." And all of a sudden, the next day they had lost their medical licenses and everything else. I mean,
Right.
they've weaponized every single system in this country for their own benefit. They've weaponized the military. You have Generals Milley, instead of getting out of Afghanistan like a competent human being, what does he do? He focuses on renaming, Bragg, Camp of Liberty or whatever the hell they called it. The greatest military installations on earth. They weaponize the military. They don't even focus on the job at hand anymore. Now it's sensitivity training. Now it's
Drag shows. Yeah.
our military. Would you want transgender bathrooms in submarines? I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And I mean, sometimes I just look at myself saying, listen, I'm a normal human being. I'm a centrist. I think there's certain things on the right that's crazy,
Yeah.
oftentimes. But man, can we just get back to the, just common sense? Just common sense.
Eric, that would be nice.
Focus on tax, focus on education, focus on
100%.
rent.
Well, let's focus on. It used to be that 80. We agreed on 80% of everything. We loved America. We love freedom and liberty. We love the Constitution. We love how we were founded. The whole thing. And now it's like we disagree on 80%, which isn't true. There are more people like you and me out there than there are those who are radical like Tim Walz and Kamala Harris. We just have to keep reminding them, and that's why I appreciate you giving me so much time. My daughter Gabby had one quick question for you on a personal level. She wanted to know if growing up in New York affected your thinking and how you run your business today. Anything on that?
Yeah, listen, absolutely. I think in the world you want to be a chameleon, and honestly, I think it's the greatest thing our parents ever did for us, right? I mean, I spent certainly time in the penthouse of Trump Tower, right? I was spoiled as hell in that regard, and my grandmother was from communist Czechoslovakia, and I also spent time in Czechoslovakia while it was still a communist country before the wall fell, and I saw that side of the world. As I said before, we were spoiled as hell, but my father never gave us, cash, right? It was just not as, if you wanted something, you went and you worked for it. You worked your butt off for it. And I was on construction sites at 11 years old, doing demo, doing HVAC, doing electrical, the greatest building blocks in the world. And so, yeah, listen, New York influenced me in a big way. It's the capital of the world, but I actually think a lot of the New York influences are terrible as a kid, right? It's fast. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of bad things, drugs, alcohol, a lot of things. I saw a lot of my friends go down horrible paths in life and rehabs and worse in some cases. And I think any interaction that you have in your world influences you. I would say get as many experiences and have them be as divergent as humanly possible. And I think that shapes the best a person that you can possibly be. If you're from a big city, spend time in a small town. Frankly,
That's
CNN
great advice.
anchors could use that, right? I mean, they totally don't understand American culture, even though they talk to America every single night. And if you're from a small town, spend time in a big city. And if you've spent your life in the U.S., try and get overseas to see what parallel universes are like. And I think a lot of that grounds you and makes you better and allows you to see perspectives that you would have never quite seen if you were monolithic and only kind of spent time in one area. So. To your
Wonderful.
beautiful daughter, yes, New York certainly shaped me. I'm not sure it always shaped me for the better. I think so many of my experiences outside New York truly shaped me.
I love your honesty, and thanks for answering that question. It's Eric Trump. Best to Laura, to Luke, and Carolina. Really appreciate you coming on, man, and thanks for being such a great friend and such an advocate for America, this great land that we love. Thank you, brother.
Love you, buddy. Take care.
All right, man. We're back after this. Stay right here.